welcome to this evening session on parenting series. And the topic that we'll be discussing this evening is to discipline or not discipline. Why is it important to discipline your child? First of all, thank you for being here. It is an honor and a lot of pleasure for me to be meeting all of you here. Just to as we get started, let me just share the screen with you that these sessions that we are having weekly, there are altogether 4 different themes that we cover. And these sessions are organized under the Institute of Neuro-Semantics, Malaysia. Weekly, in the sense that the first week we talk on neuro-semantics, on the second week we talk on relationship. The third week, that was last week, we talked on the meta coaching series. And this week, on the 4th week of the month, the topic goes into parenting. And just to introduce myself, especially for those who are watching it by video on YouTube, I'm Mazuki. I'm a neuro-semantics trainer and meta coach, and I represent Malaysia in the leadership team of the International Society of Neuro-Semantics. What I do as my work is that I help people to systematically develop skills in leading, communicating, and coaching to bring out the best in not just yourself, but also in others as well. And when you are able to actualize that, you experience an exceptional quality of life filled with happiness, fulfillment, and creativity. Now, in the 60 or 90 minutes together, for this evening, we'll be discussing about what discipline is, why is discipline important for children, what are the 3 types of discipline, how does lack of discipline affect a child, and how do you discipline a child. And as usual, for those of you who are familiar, I will pause for discussion after each main point to invite questions, comments, or contributions, especially contributions. And if any one of you are new to this space, just feel free to explore, to think out loud, so that we can have a lively discussion. And as usual, another reminder is that my style is to be light and humorous. So if I laugh or smile, I'm never laughing at you, but at our silly human qualities. My purpose is to lighten things up, reduce being serious, and be more real. So moving on to the first point that I would like to bring to our discussion for this evening is, what is discipline? Now, before I go into that, I just as I was getting prepared for this session this evening, I was thinking about what was it that inspired me to talk about this, because on the topic of discipline, we discussed almost a year ago, we discussed about this. Then what got me to be inspired to bring this topic again was I was having a conversation with a friend, and he was talking about how when he was brought up, his father was a disciplinarian. And what he said to me was he put up with it because that's who his father is, and he loves his father, and he put up with all the discipline that came his way, even though he was quite unhappy with all of those, but he put up with it. It's just that fast forward a few decades, he himself has a son, daughter, and then recently has another son. Now, the elder son, being the first grandson to his father has a lot of high hopes for his grandson, and his father was bringing that disciplinarian style to his grandson. Now, his son put up with it, but not his grandson. And they came to a point where there was a lot of conflict between his father and his son. And he was trying to figure out how to resolve that issue. It's just that trying to be disciplined with his grandson created that conflict to the extent that his grandson didn't want to go to the grandfather's house anymore. However, it didn't work with the granddaughter, because the granddaughter, who's slightly younger, just ignore whatever grandfather wanted to do. So in this topic of discipline, that was what triggered my, I would say, the inspiration in me to talk about this evening. Maybe we can shed more light into this. Okay, so our first point for this evening is, what is discipline? Most time, people use the word discipline and punishment interchangeably. So when they punish, they say it's discipline. When it is discipline, it is punishment. They use it interchangeably. But these words have different meanings. Although sometimes discipline entails some form of punishment, it does not mean that they are the same. Now, let's take a look at the word discipline. The word discipline is gotten from the Latin word discipulus. I don't know, probably in Latin they pronounce it that way or differently, but it's from that word, discipulus, which translate into English as to learn. So that's where the word discipline comes from. It's about learning. So when we over here this evening, when we are talking about discipline, we are referring to that when you say that you are disciplining your child, it means that you teach your child. And teaching requires time, attention, patience, and an understanding of your child. And I deliberately use the photo of a girl learning, I don't know, karate or whatever it is, a form that of martial art. It is a form of discipline. It takes that patience, it takes time, it takes attention, and it takes understanding. So in order to discipline your child into whatever discipline that they want to learn, notice how we use the word discipline. It also refers to an area of skill, an area of knowledge. We talk about the discipline of engineering, the discipline of medicine, the discipline of mathematics. So that is what we are referring to learn that. Yeah. Now, physical punishment is a form of negative discipline. Inflicting pain on a child is not a corrective measure. In the long term, the child gets used to the pain and goes ahead to do what they want. And that is not what you want for your child, do you? Yeah. So when practiced correctly, discipline uses various approaches, including the consequence reward concept, using several models and positive encouragement. So let me just, I forgot to silence my phone here. Yeah, let me just silence my handphone. And since the phone is, my iPad and phone are connected, so when the call came into the phone, it just also messes up my iPad. So excuse me for that. So what we are talking about, discipline in the right context, is about learning, is about modeling, is about conditioning. That's what we are referring to as discipline. When it is done properly, proper discipline would help a child to associate actions and consequences. And I would like you to focus on those two, actions and consequences, because when a child comes into this world, the child does not know that there are consequences to action. So that's that bit about discipline when we talk about discipline, to bring into the child's concept, self-concept. And the thing about concept is that they fully develop concept only when they reach the age of about 12. So that's why when we talk about disciplining a child, it takes that time, because we are teaching the child about actions and consequences, and the concept of action and consequences really comes into the child's development process only at about the age of 10 to 12 years old. So that's why we are talking about discipline takes time. Okay. Now, let's move to the next topic for us to understand why is discipline important for children. Child discipline is about teaching a child the right way to behave. And when we talk about teaching, as what we have discussed before, a child goes through the developmental process. So that's why when we teach a child something, we teach a child in small bits, small chunks that's relevant to their current developmental growth. We do not want to burden the child with learning that is beyond their current growth. So discipline is about teaching a child the right way to behave. That way they do not develop behavioral disorders. And then there is no need for punishments. Discipline is essential in a growing child's life, not only because it teaches them to be responsible adults, but it also has numerous benefits for a child's development. Some of these benefits include safety, emotional stability, proper decision-making skills, and many more. So let's take a look at just a few of these benefits of discipline in a child. Why is discipline important for children? Now, the first one that I would like to share with you this evening is discipline helps a child develop self-discipline. Self-discipline is about self-control. You won't always be with your child, but you want them always to be well-behaved, don't you? Because when they are well-behaved, they can get along well in society. So disciplining your child would develop their skill of self-discipline and self-control. They know that mom does not like it when I do this. When they have that at the back of their minds, they can control themselves, even when you are not there with them. So now they are disciplining or controlling themselves without you being in the picture. So in this way, they're able to be more in control of themselves. So that is at the foundation of self-leadership, to be able to control yourself. So that's the first one. Discipline helps a child develop self-discipline. The second one is that discipline develops good decision-making skills. By using discipline to teach them, you are teaching them to make good decisions. This way, they know that actions have consequences. This allows them to imbibe the difference between good and bad from a very young age. Good and bad as determined by society, as determined by family. So it gives them the ability to make decisions that I would enjoy doing this, but by doing this, I am violating this value that we have in our family. So I decide not to do this because I value that value in the family. So that is part of decision making, of making a decision of doing the right things instead of doing the things that I just like doing or prefer. Okay. So the third point here is that why discipline is important for children is that discipline helps your child learn to control their emotions. When you refuse to give in to your child's tears on your next trip to the mall, they quickly realize that perhaps tears would not always give them what they want. Or when your child is having difficulties performing a task and you praise them, it teaches them to cope with frustration better. Putting a child in, say, a timeout when they misbehave would allow them to reflect on their behavior and know that child behavior is, that such a behavior is unacceptable. That way, when such a situation comes up again, they can control their emotions and react better to the problems. And talking about asking a child to go for a timeout, as parents, we need to realize that timeout is about reflection. Sometimes how we get our children to do these timeouts is to get them to stand in front of the wall and not move from there. Now, parents need to realize that the purpose, the intention of standing facing the wall is not about counting how many holes you have on the wall, but it's about getting them to reflect. So when you get them to go for a timeout, go to your room and stay in your room, or whatsoever the timeout that you have, you want to keep reminding them that they are there not just to be by themselves, to think about what the behavior was and what's the consequence. Notice is about teaching them about consequences of behavior. Yeah. So this is the third point, very important, that discipline helps your child learn to control their emotions. Now, the next point that I would like to share with you here is that discipline can help a child manage anxiety. Children are children, and you have to make decisions for them to help them develop properly. When you put a child who barely knows anything in a situation where they have to make decisions for themselves at such an early stage, it psychologically affects them because they are not ready to make that decision. Children have to grow in a safe and consistent environment. Putting them in leadership positions at such tender ages can cause them to panic because they do not know what they are doing. Even as adults, we panic when we do not know what to do. Imagine what that would be like for a child. So that's why, as parents, we tell them, these are the things that you need to do. And what we are doing is that we are removing from them that part that they need to make a decision. And because they are not developed enough to make informed decision, by removing the need for them to make a decision just relieves them of anxiety. Otherwise, without that barrier or that limit, if we don't put that limit and they have to make decisions for themselves, and in a situation where they are not yet competent to do that, that puts in a lot of pressure and anxiety on the child. So that's how discipline can help a child manage anxiety. And the fifth one for this evening is that discipline your kids can ensure their safety. Every parent, don't we, want to keep our kids safe. Discipline is teaching your kids that they are not allowed to talk to strangers, but it's not just telling them what they can or cannot do. We should try to explain why they should not do such things and what situations can they do. So giving them that boundary in order for them to know what's safe and what's unsafe. Remember, the other thing is that children, they love to test rules. So when you put boundaries, they would also want to test the boundaries. However, you don't want them testing it out with something that could potentially harm them. So when they know what the consequences of the actions could be, they are less likely to try it out. So there are some boundaries that are softer, and there are some boundaries that are harder, if I were to use that analogy. Yeah. Softer boundaries when the consequence of a behavior is not unsafe for the child. Harder boundaries are when the consequence of that behavior can create danger or harm to the child. So if I were to summarize the 5 points that I brought to our discussion for this evening regarding why is discipline important for children, the first point is that it helps your child develop self-discipline. The second one is that discipline develops good decision-making skills. The third one is discipline helps a child learn to control their emotions. The fourth one is discipline can help your child manage anxiety. And the fifth one is disciplining your child can ensure their safety. So those are 5 points that I can come up with about why is discipline important for children. So I would like to pause here and invite your comments from your own experiences with disciplining your children in the context of why it is important for our children. And the earlier point that we discussed about what discipline is that discipline is not punishment. Punishment can be a part of the disciplining process. However, discipline is about learning. It's about being a student, a disciple. That's what discipline is about. So I'd like to invite any one of you, if you have any questions or comments or contributions, just go ahead, unmute the mic and let me hear.
Yes, Mazuki, I'd love to ask.
Yes.
Oftentimes we watch from the movie, or sometimes I did it too, like when they misbehave and then we'll say something like, okay, you're grounded. So you can't play computer games for a day, for example. So is that discipline, or I know there's some sort of punishment, but how does it help? Or does it help, or it won't work in disciplining the child?
Thank you. Now, what the point that the example that you give just now is really important, and how it works and when it doesn't work is when we don't understand that there are three, we consider that as the 3 types of discipline. We are going to cover that afterwards, the third point, the 3 types of discipline. But since you asked that question, when you use it in a way, that way of punishment, so to speak, as discipline, when you use it as corrective discipline, that's why it may not work, because it has to come in at the stage which we call preventive first, to tell them the consequence. Because, for example, if a child doesn't know that a certain behavior will cause them in terms of a certain punishment, and suddenly we give the punishment, then there is not much that they learn from that. However, if there is an agreement up front that this behavior will entail this kind of punishment. So, and why is there a punishment for this behavior? So notice there is that learning process, the teaching process. You are telling them this behavior is not acceptable because it has these dire consequences. So when you go against this barrier, then you have to pay the price for it. Teaching little children that there is a price to pay for action, because every action has a result to it. Some results are desirable, some results are undesirable. So discipline is when we say that if you do this, there is an undesirable result. So that's why if you have to do this, then there are certain punishment that comes because it is creating that result. So in that context, if you already have that agreement, then it becomes a source of learning for them. Otherwise, it becomes a source of conflict. Yeah, source of conflict. I was watching on TV series just the other evening, whereby in the olden times, this was set in the 1800s in Scotland. In the olden times, when if a wife does something that endangers the community, the job of disciplining the wife is on the husband. And people and people in that time, they agree to it. Okay, so since my wife did something that was caused a danger to the villagers, then the husband has to whip her. However, in that story, they brought a character who does not know about that. And when she did something that created danger to the village, the husband wanted to punish her, but she just started to run away and fought the husband because of it. So notice that when there is no agreement in the first place, then it can have unresourceful. Yes, Daniel. you got to that one. I just discovered that, so I was just watching it.
Yeah, I watch it also. So it's so familiar. And thank you for your explanation. I think, yeah, it's about the learning. So whether there is an earlier agreement tied to it, if not, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Daniel, with your girls, if you already have the boundaries and you tell them if you breach these boundaries, there are going to be consequences in terms of punishment. And if they have already understood it, when they breach it, what happens is that you don't need to tell them what the punishment is. They already know. These are for children who are responsible in their behaviors. And I remember when my children were growing up, we set those boundaries. And whenever they break the boundaries, we say, okay, so you did this. So what should be the punishment for this? And as parents, the easy part for me is that to ask them what the punishment should be. I don't need to set the punishment anymore.
Yes, always give them option to choose.
Sorry again, Cik Siu?
No, I agree what you say. Always give them option to choose, because like I always make it like, you see, Malaysia famous for badminton. So I make it like badminton. You want men single, woman single, or mixed double. Means men single means I whack him, woman single, mother whack him. If mixed double means both of us whack him. He choose. He has 3 options always.
Option to choose to be punished, yes. And by the way, many times they surprise me that when I say, okay, so what will the punishment be? They come up with punishment that I thought would be hard on them. I mean, if I were to give the punishment, it will not be that hard. But when I ask them, so what would the punishment be? They'll come up with punishment that is, to me, harder than I would give to them. So that's how they grow to understand about behavior and consequences. And that's a wonderful thing that you can give to your children, because when they grow up, they become responsible adults. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
Hi, Marzuki. I do want to ask something. Are you going to share the slides?
Which one?
Oh, the slides that you showed just now.
Yeah.
Are you going to send to us or how? Because actually my wife is supposed to join with us, but yeah, she's kind of busy today. So yeah.
Yeah, I can share the slide if you want. Then I'll just email the slides to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Then my second question is that
Yes.
just now I mentioned that time and patience. We need time and patience to discipline our child, right?
Yes.
But these are exactly what we don't have. How do you manage that? I mean, sometimes we don't have time, we don't have patience. There are so many things on our plate as well, and that's the reason why me and my wife joined this talk. And especially actually, I'm not based in Malaysia, so I'm based in Macau. I've been away for like 10 years.
Okay.
So my wife is actually managing the house and the kids.
Yeah.
So quite challenging actually. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It is very challenging. And the thing about it, why we need that time and patience, and as parents, we need to find that time and patience, is because one is the developmental stages. Children, they are not tiny adults. They are just developing their thinking, their cognitive ability, their emotional ability. So you cannot teach them all at one go. You have to teach them one thing. And maybe in a year's time, it's the same thing, then you need to add another dimension to it. You cannot, let's say something has 10 points to it. You cannot give all 10 points to the child because the child is not ready to take in that yet. So maybe at the age of 1, you need to give 1 point regarding it. And maybe in 2 years' time, then you can give another 1 or 2 points regarding it because they are just growing. Their development is in terms of the psychosocial development, cognitive development. So all of these stages, the word is stages. It comes in stages. So that's why it requires time. You cannot teach them one go. You have to ration out that learning according to their development stages. So that's why it requires time. Now, how to gain more patience? I would say it's about understanding parenting much better. As parents, we need to realize that parenting requires a lot of skills. Once we understand, we have the knowledge, skills, and attitudes about parenting, that will give us greater patience with respect to their behaviors. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine as well, just a few days ago. So they were losing their patience with the wife's father-in-law. With the husband's father-in-law, the stepfather of the wife. So they were losing patience with the man, 60-year-old or something. So because the way that he was behaving with respect to the grandchildren and all that, they just could not comprehend it, and they were losing patience with that man. So when my friend was telling me about certain of his behavior, then I began to invite him to look at the man's behavior in a different light. In the context of Neuro-Semantics, I brought in the aspect of meta programs. Meta programs are our default way of thinking, and I showed it to them. That is that man's default way of thinking. So that's why he's missing certain elements, and that's why he's behaving in that way. So when we had that discussion, and then he began to understand his father-in-law in a different light, all of that anguish, all of that anger just dissolved. And oftentimes, understanding children's developmental stages helps give us that patience. For example, kids at our stress. So this is where, when you understand that development stage, their behavior doesn't make it stressful to you. For example, a 2-year-old sitting on the high chair takes the food and throws it onto the floor. a parent who does not understand that will get stressed with that behavior. You are dirtying the floor, you are wasting food and all that. But a parent who understands kids at the age of 2, that's what they do. They are just testing gravity to see, oh, when I put it out, it falls down. They are just doing the experiment. So parents who understand that, that's the stage that they need to experiment certain things. So when something like that happens, parents who understand it will say, okay, now my son or my daughter is learning that thing. And so this is where understanding the developmental progress of our children will give us the patience, because patience comes from understanding their behavior. Yeah. I hope that that makes sense to you. Things like your child, firstborn, coming out at the age of a few months old, 1 year old, so cute, everything so nice. Suddenly at the age of 2, starts to say no to you, disagree with you. Before that, everything also nice, suddenly disagree with you. Many parents get upset. Wow, my child so kurang ajar. Now I want to do this, disagree and all that. But when you understand that that's part of the individuating process, they are just learning that, hey, I am not mama. I am a different person. So this is what we call individuating. They learn that they are now an individual. So when parents understand that, okay, 2 years old, individuating, so let the child individuate, let the child learn that they are an individual, that they can say no to things, and that child becomes very, if that process is allowed in the child in a healthy way, the child regains balance very quickly, as opposed to a child when they are individuating and being scolded, being suppressed from individuating. That individuating process can be lengthened to 3, even 5 years. So that's why some children, even at the age of 7 or 8, are still not complete in the individuating process. So there you go. So that is why we say that learning requires knowledge and skills and having the right attitudes. Okay, is that helpful, KK? So, right, so let's move to the next point for this evening. And Danielle, thank you for asking the previous question, because the previous question preempted the 3 types of discipline. 3 types in the sense that it is important for us to remember that in general, there is no general rule book that applies to all children. Okay, the moment you have 2 or more, then you realize that, okay, what worked for my firstborn doesn't work for my second one, because every child is unique. The primary determining factor of your preferred type of discipline should be your understanding of your child. Understanding your child would allow you to select the best disciplinary style suited to them. For example, if you still have a toddler, it is important to note that the child is simply ignorant at this stage. So when they behave in a way that to you is a misbehavior, but they are not doing it in order to test you, in order to make you angry, but they are just ignorant that that behavior is a misbehavior. So the best disciplinary measure for this child is a simple correction and constantly reminding them of the right thing to do until you begin to see them being able to do it without being told. Now, the case might be different with a teenager. That is why you need to assess your child's age and behavior so you can know what strategy would suit them. There are three main types of discipline. The first type of discipline is called preventive discipline or preventative discipline. So I'm using the word preventive discipline. This type of discipline that has to do with establishing rules, establishing rules that children must obey. So we establish rules. When we go to the shop, to the mall, these are the things that you can do, these are the things that you shouldn't do. So this includes guidelines, code of conduct. They are put in place to prevent children from misbehaving. These rules are there to tell the child what to do. So an example of preventive discipline is telling your child what behavior is acceptable and what behavior is bad. And know that acceptable and bad are subjective according to the culture surrounding. Okay, so acceptable and bad in the context of society, in the context of family, let them know that. Let them know that. Yeah, so one is to tell your child what is acceptable and what is bad behavior. Another is telling your children the consequence of bad behavior. So when we go to the mall, we are just going to look around. We are not going to buy anything. So now you are creating a boundary. We are not going to buy any toys. If at the mall, you ask me to buy any toy, then we are going to go straight home. So that's the consequence. So you've identified that the behavior that is not desired. And what is the consequence when the behavior is performed? Okay. Then the third one is rewarding good behavior. So this is positive reinforcement in the sense that we do not want to just catch them when they do wrong and we punish them. We also want to catch them when they do things right and reward them. Because by doing that, we are encouraging them to behave in the right way. So preventive discipline is a safe, non-confrontational approach to teach the children that actions have consequences. This way, the children know what to expect. And I just want to highlight this point again, that as parents, we want to teach our children that actions have consequences. Because when they grow up and they don't understand that in the later part of the discussion, then that can have dire consequences. So that's preventive discipline. The next one is supportive discipline. This type of discipline comes into play after the child has disobeyed an established rule. Remember, in preventive discipline, you have the boundaries. Now the child goes against the boundary. However, in supportive discipline, this is not the time to punish the child. It may be the case that the child forgot this rule, and a simple reminder would be sufficient. Supportive discipline differs from punishment because it allows the child to decide to correct the behavior before punishment is required. So, what are examples of supportive discipline? One is verbal or non-verbal warnings. Verbal warnings, you tell them there's something wrong. Non-verbal warning, some parents have this really good. They just look at the child in a certain way. The child know, oh no, I'm in trouble. Some parents have that that way of control. So giving them warning that the behavior is undesired. Okay. Next is redirecting or reminding the child of the rules they are disobeying. So this is another example of supportive discipline. And then the third example here is that an immediate reaction to the bad behavior. So if they behave in a certain way, then you react immediately. For example, you say that, okay, if you were to ask for a toy, we agreed that we are not going to buy any toys when we go to the mall, and you ask for the toy, so we are going back home now. So everybody goes home. So you have that immediate reaction, and they know that, okay, so they have to face the consequence because that behavior is undesirable. Okay, so that is supportive discipline, because we want that child to further develop. And the third kind of type of discipline is what we call corrective discipline. This type of discipline comes into play after the supportive discipline measure has failed. The child refused to change the bad behavior. This is when you may now decide to punish the child for their misbehavior. And punishment can come in different forms. So in order to get them to change their behavior and they still went against it, so that's when we bring in the consequence, the punishment. And the punishment has to match the child's development process. From my own personal perspective, physical punishment must never be exacted on a child before they reach the age of discernment. The age of discernment is about 10 years old. Discernment is that they are able to discern between what is good and what is bad. So before the age of discernment, whatever punishment that you want to give to your child, you should not put in physical punishment, like eating on the hands or whatsoever. Physical punishment should only come in after the age of discernment. So that is my personal approach to it. The reason why I say that is I notice many parents are very quick to punish the children using physical force, even when the child is still very young. So it doesn't help that way. Okay. So when we talk about punishment, there are many types of punishment. We talk about what we call removal of privilege. I remember when my children were growing up, they were in primary school, and we had a rule at that time that after dinner they should be studying, they should be doing homework and all that. That they should limit their TV time, and initially after dinner they would do that, and after some time I noticed that almost every evening they'd be watching TV. So initially I warned them not to watch TV too much and all that. They will just retract, but they went back to doing that, and after some time I just kept quiet. I allowed them to do that. After I think about a term or so, end of term examination, each and every one of them got really bad grades in their exams. Yeah. So I called them up and said, okay, so what happened? And have that conversation with them. To cut things short, they came up with the explanation, okay, we got bad grades in our exams because we were watching too much TV, and because of that, what we are going to do is that we are not going to watch TV too much. And I say, what is too much? So okay, so this the punishment came from the biggest culprit. My son, he was the biggest culprit. He was the one who kept watching TV. So he said, okay, we are not going to watch TV during the weekday. We'll watch TV only during weekends. I said, okay, so when does weekend start and when does weekday start? So they had the discussion and they came back to me, say weekend starts at 6 p.m. on Friday and weekend ends at 6 p.m. on Sunday. So between 6 p.m. on Sunday to 6 p.m. on Friday, no TV at all. So they come up with their own punishment in that particular way. And guess what? As parents, when the children decide that to be the punishment, so parents, we also need to follow through with that. So that's why Rosita and I, when the children were in school, neither do we watch TV during weekdays. So how many years we did not watch TV during weekdays? Because that was what we agreed with the children. Okay, so that's another, when we talk about discipline. So 3 types of discipline. One is preventive, another is supportive, and the third one is corrective. So I'm going to pause here and invite any questions or comments that you might have before we go on to the next point. Okay, good. Okay, so let's move to the next point, where we'll be discussing on the consequences. How does lack of discipline affect a child? And we as parents need to be very clear about this. Yeah? While you might want to avoid disciplining your child because you would feel guilty for not giving them what they want, or because you are not ready for any tantrum, we must not be tired of putting our children on the right path. And it would pay off in the future when you look at your child. You are proud of what you have done and who your child has become. Indiscipline is something that could come back to haunt you later. So here are some things that lack of discipline can do to your child. One is undeveloped coping skills. Undeveloped coping skills. When a child is undisciplined, they miss out on the chance to develop skills that will help them deal with life's challenges on their own. They become so dependent on their parents to help them solve everything. This can make them feel stressed and overwhelmed when you are not around. If they continue to feel like this repeatedly, it can lead to a mental collapse. You want to raise a strong, independent child to become an adult, like a king or queen that would be able to overcome life's challenges. So that's the first consequence of lack of discipline. Another is lack of boundaries. Boundaries are essential, and this is why other people would set them to protect themselves. An undisciplined child would not know such limits. They would always move around, not knowing how to respect people's choices. This is because they are not familiar with rules and respect, which would make them struggle in social setting. In social setting, we have agreed upon behaviors. When our children do not learn about boundaries, then they go against the agreed upon behaviors, and that can cause them to be outcasts in society. The third one is that laziness. A child that is used to getting everything they want would have difficulties keeping a job. And I believe all of you know that in the jobs, in the work that you do, you face lots and lots and lots of problems. And it's our job when we are doing that to solve those problems. So if a child is was not raised in a way that is disciplined, then the child will just take the easy way out and not solve the problems that they are supposed to solve when they are having the jobs, and they will lose their jobs. Why? Because they would always be frustrated that they have to work for what they want, because they were not introduced to a work reward system. And that's what discipline introduced to our children, the work reward system. And and the fourth one is instant gratification. Without discipline, our children grow with this concept of whatever that I want it now. When you leave kids to do whatever they want, they will continuously pursue instant gratification, and they fail to develop meaningful pursuits. As adults, we know that this is an unhealthy behavior that can reduce the quality of life. Happiness is realizing that good things take time. Teaching your kids this at an early stage would make them always focused on the positive, meaning to say that discipline teaches them that, okay, it's difficult now. However, when I persist, then I will get the reward for my difficulty, not to be looking for the easy way out right now. So if I were to put that as a summary, how does lack of discipline affect the child? One is undeveloped coping skill. Second one is lack of boundaries. The third one is laziness. And the fourth one is instant gratification. So those are four, and these are not all of it, but for the purpose of our discussion for this evening, these are four things that our child will lack, will develop if they grow up to not be disciplined. Okay, so let me again pause over here and invite any questions or comments from any one of you, or maybe you can think of any additional points that will be the consequence of the lack of discipline in our children. So you are good with that? Right. How many of you watch P. Ramlee's movie, Anakku Sazali? Anyone who watched that? Old movie. You did not watch that. Anakku Sazali is what do you call? One of the few serious movies that P. Ramlee made, because P. Ramlee is well known for his humorous movies, but this is one of the serious one. It's about a child who was raised without any boundaries, and he grew up to become very self-centered and didn't care about others, to the extent that he ultimately caused a lot of harm to his parents. And towards the end of the movie, he himself, that son, the nice thing about the movie was P. Ramlee played the role of the son, and he also played the role of the father in that same movie. So he came to a very bad ending, and what he said to the father at the end of it, had only you disciplined me when I was small, had only you taught me well when I was small, I wouldn't have come to this end. So this is what we are referring to, the consequences of not disciplining your child. So let's move to the final point for this evening, is how do you discipline a child? Here are some disciplinary methods that you can incorporate into your discipline strategies. These are not all of it, because there are many more that you can come up with. The key thing is for us to go back and realize, what is discipline? Discipline is about learning to be an adult who is well adjusted in the society. Okay, so let's take one example over here. Is that one way to discipline your child is to establish limits for your children and be consistent with those rules. If you put on limits and you don't enforce, or you are not consistent, you are not teaching your child the right thing. So have limits and be consistent with the rules. And not just the limits, don't forget to tell them why it is good for them. So this is the behavior consequence. These are limits, these are the consequence. What is the consequence of doing this? What is the consequence of obeying the limit? And what is the consequence of disobeying the limit? Next one is, when they exhibit good behavior, be sure to praise or reward them. This is positive reinforcement. In coaching as well, what we do is that when we learn about coaching, we tell people what they did right, and we tell them also what they didn't do right, because people need to be expressly informed what was the right thing that they did, so that they can do more of that. Okay, so when they do good behaviors, praise and reward them. Next one is when they misbehave. You can put them in a timeout to reflect on their behavior, and timeout will be of different types depending on their ages. However, the key thing about timeouts is about reflecting on the behavior, so that they can know what was the problematic behavior and what's the consequence of that problematic behavior. So again, it's about behavior consequence. Next is, don't use harsh words on your kids. Verbal abuse can emotionally scar a child. Sometimes it leads to more bad behaviors because they start using these words among their peers. When our children were small, we have this rule that if anybody were to use harsh words, so one of the harsh words that we had in our home when the children were little was the word stupid. So we do not allow anybody to call anybody stupid. And if anybody were to accidentally say that, they have to pinch their own lips. So all that we need to do, what's the word that you said just now? So we disallow harsh words. Now, when an undesired behavior comes up, what we show to them is the behavior. So this is also important as parents, to separate person from behavior. So we are saying that this behavior is unacceptable. Sometimes parents the mistake to lump the child and the behavior together. Okay, so be careful about that. So next one is how to discipline your child is, you can take away some of their privileges and make them know that they have to earn it back when they do what you want them to do. Okay, so taking away of privileges is a form of behavior. And when I say that, I started to smile just now, remembering that when I was in boarding school, one of the punishments that we have two categories of punishment in boarding school. You can say three. Yeah, two. One is confinement. Confinement because every week we are given town leave. In boarding school, you just don't go in and out of the campus. To go out of the campus is called town leave. Town leave is only on Saturday from 12, from 12 in the afternoon to about 6 in the evening, and on Sunday from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening. That's called town leave. So one of the punishment is taking away privilege. That is confinement. Confinement means you are not allowed town leave and you have to report that you are on campus. So with children as well, what you can do is that know that certain things are privileges that they enjoy, and when they misbehave, those privileges can be taken away from them. Yeah. Ignore them. This is next one is ignore them when they whine for things that you refuse to give to them. Because that would teach them that crying does not get them something. They would seek better alternatives to get what they want. And careful, parents fall into the trap. When the child cries, you feel sorry, and then you cave in. So that is not going to help the child to learn discipline. Okay. And last one here is that allow them to experience the natural consequences of their actions, but don't allow them to get into any real danger. For example, if your child refuses to eat a healthy meal, let them feel hungry for a while before giving them the same healthy meal and reward them with a snack. Okay, so let them experience the natural consequences of that behavior. So that's why we have that discipline. So that covers some of the ways that you can discipline children. And I wonder what interesting ways that you have used that you have used in order to discipline your children. As I was saying, that one of the things that I learned about cleanliness. So, and it came, yeah, you can call it discipline, but it came from desire. You see, one way or the other, me, my brothers, we tend to, you know, guys, boys, we tend to gravitate to things that are mechanical and all that. So, so probably this is a way that my father wanted to teach us about cleanliness. He'll put it as a privilege. Oh, now you are big enough, so I give you the privilege of cleaning the family car. And we are not allowed to just clean it in any way that we want. Since you are still 5 years old, I'll only allow you to clean the tires and the wheels. You cannot clean the body yet. So I would be cleaning the tires and waiting for the time that my father would say, okay, now you can clean the body, because it requires a higher level of skill. So this is one way of discipline, and I value it until today, because it helps me to be to take care of cleanliness, to take care of neatness, because that discipline was introduced to us not from punishment, but from privilege. So it was a privilege to wash the family car's tires, to wash the family car's body. And later on, he would say, oh yes, you know how to take care of the car. So now you are allowed to learn how to drive the car. So that the step-by-step process. So these are ways that you can bring discipline into our children's lives. So it is not only from the perspective of boundaries and punishment, it is also from the perspective of privilege and enjoyment. That's how we can bring discipline into the lives of our children, so that they become more resourceful. Yes, Danielle, you put there, how to make washing dishes a privilege. This is where, as they say, leadership by example comes in. I dislike the term chores for the things that you do in the house, because chores sound like, oh, I don't want to do chores, it's not nice, and washing dishes is a kind of a chore. So instead, so these are all meanings and frames. So sometimes parents make this mistake of framing the things that you do in the house in terms of cleaning, washing dishes, clothes, and all that. They frame that as undesirable activities, and therefore it becomes a form of punishment if you don't. Yeah. The key thing is, if you remember one of the topics that I brought, the TEAMS method for parenting, is you do that with your children. So washing dishes is an activity that we do together. And as parents, when we bring in the states of love and joy in washing dishes together, in cleaning the table after meal, in vacuuming the floor every day. So when you bring the states of joy and the love and joy into those activities, then those activities becomes desirable activities, and it becomes privilege to the extent that what happened in my case, I felt privileged that now I'm able to wash the family car. And until today, when I think about washing car, I have that kind of wonderful feeling, because hey, washing car is something that is wonderful. It's pleasurable to do. So bring pleasure. So what do you call, Daniel? This is APG pattern, pleasuring and depleasuring. So bring pleasure into the activities in the home, so that they now realize that, like I gave the example when Grasshopper was 6 years old, went up to Mama and said, Mama, can I do the laundry from A to Z? So it's about the states that you are in. So as parents, when you do things grumbling, reluctantly, sometimes parents, they go, oh, why do you have to behave in this way? Don't you know that I have to slave over the kitchen, making food for you? Do you know? You think it is easier? I have to do all of those. When I come back from work, I have to go. So the things that they do in the house daily, and you frame them from the states of reluctance, states of pushing away, the states of complaining, then those activities become undesirable in the eyes of the children. So that's why some parents, they struggle with the children not wanting to do all of those. But when you do the things that are necessary for healthy living from the states of love and joy, that's when the children love to do them. And getting them to do those things doesn't become a chore. Yeah. Maybe if I were to share another example, Grasshopper, she takes care of her brothers and sisters, and when it came down to the fourth one, so there were 5 in the family. So the fourth one, Mayan, I think he's about 4 or 5 years old now, because when he was littler, smaller, still 5 years old now, his sister would bathe him with such joy and all that. And when he had a little sister, just I think a couple of months ago, his mama gave him the privilege of bathing his little sister 100%. And when he had the opportunity to bathe his little sister and put on a pretty dress for the little sister, I don't have the picture with me here now. The mama took a picture of him. His face was beaming with pleasure that he did it. Yeah, I bathed my sister and I dressed her prettily. So it's all in the state, the frames that we put to behaviors. Okay, so any other questions or comments? So those are the 5 points that I brought to our discussion for this evening. So the first one was on what is discipline. The second point on why is discipline important for children? The third one is, what are the 3 types of discipline? The fourth one is, how does lack of discipline affect the child? And the fifth one is, how do you discipline your children? So any questions or comments from any one of you? Coming to the end of already?
No.
No? Okay, so if there are nothing else for you to add, I would like to invite each and every one of you to share with me, to share with everyone here, what is your takeaway for this evening? And after doing this, this takeaway bit, this has become my favorite part of the discussion, when I'm able to hear from you, what is your takeaway for the session. So let me start off with, okay, since Pdzo, your video is already on, let me hear from you. What's your takeaway for this evening?
Yeah, because my takeaway is like we always have a misconception about discipline. Because discipline is always like, listen to me, okay, show you the can. You see, this is the consequences if you don't listen to me kind of things. You see, just be cooperative, don't be creative kind of thing. Okay? That is why we always have this kind of discipline kind of thing. But when we want to discipline our kids, we have to be fierce. We have to look like a bit ugly and kind of thing, so that they're scared. Then they listen to us kind of thing. But actually, well, I mean, it's already. I mean, certain extent that works. Okay, but when you impose fear, always kind of things, right? I will say it won't last lah. It won't last lah, because later, I mean, they will just tak ada rasa anymore. Just like during my primary school, take myself as an example lah. The teachers try to impose fear on us. Every Sunday we'll check our calligraphy book. Those who didn't write the calligraphy, it will cane you for, I mean, just 3 weeks lah. So first we were so scared, But after 2 months, I knew already straight away. Sunday I just open my hand, open my palm, whip lah. Dah tak ada rasa, that kind of thing. So knew already, whip lah, it's okay. Because I also get used to the pain already, so tak ada rasa already kind of thing. That's why it won't last. That is why. Also, that's why we always misconcept about this one. It's not always impose fear and okay, the cane kind of things. But during our era, the cane make you can do kind of things. You see. Because all this I experienced during my primary school. Imagine that, because last time standard 5 we have this ujian penilaian kind of thing. Last our time is standard 5 month, not standard 6 month, correct or not? So during the time, right, the teacher always also make us to do those kind of so-called past year question, 50 question. So always make sure as long as your mark keep on dropping, right, then you're gonna keep, then go out and then whip 3 times again kind of thing. So just imagine I score 96, still kena rotan kind of things. Just wrong 2 questions also kena rotan kind of thing, in Chinese school lah. I mean, as usual kind of thing. So that is why, I mean, but after we rotan for a few times, I also immune already kind of thing. And just go out and open my arm, rotan saja lah, it's okay. You are welcome. So that's why I won't say, that's why it's not work. It's not from outside, it has to be from within kind of things. Like we always say, like an egg, you see, if the force break the egg from outside, it's death. But if the force break the egg from inside, it's life. So that is why. That's what I might take away.
Thank you. That's wonderful, Pdzo. Thank you. Next, KK, go ahead. If you would like to share, what is 1 or 2 takeaway from you?
I think this is very tough. Yeah. Just now I mentioned that, time and patience, all that, right? I also say that, I mean, it's very difficult to find time and patience, especially now kids are too smart. I always wonder that, during my time, right, we don't have all these issues. I don't know why nowadays it's so challenging, Yeah. I think we need to find time to really sit down and understand that. I mean, a lot of things that you say make sense.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult to implement.
Yeah.
It's really difficult, especially things, are running so fast, we are living in such a fast-paced environment, right? And especially now I'm away from my wife and my kids. And we are doing all this remotely, every night I try to have private talk with my daughter also. But again, she has her own thoughts. I mean, she's 13 years old, So a lot of things that I share with her, right, she will say, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I mean, I hit puberty already. She even told me that she likes someone in her class. So I also don't know how to manage that, I mean. Very tough, very tough. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that, KK.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. And last but not least, Danielle, go ahead. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, thank you so much. I love tonight's session. When it comes to parenting, I think it's never. I'm still learning, and then yeah, and I particularly like the part that you said that to induce pleasure when we discipline the child, and just you shared that just now. It reminded me how my husband do that with them, because our style is a little bit different. I'm the fierce one at home, and then Chris is more like more relaxed and more empowering kind of type. So he makes the bed sheet changing activity as like a game. So the girls love it. It's like looking forward to change bed sheet all the time, not only their own bed sheets, our bed sheets as well. Then only I realized that why they love it so much, because they're waiting for the moment when put the blankets ready, and then we have to flip the blanket to make it flat, right? And then they call it the tsunami, the blanket tsunami. So it's like, for them it's like imaginary game, something like that. So yeah, so once you told me that to induce pleasure, then it reminded me this story. Yeah. And I would like to also say something, can I, to KK?
Please.
Just to encourage you a bit.
Yes. Thanks.
Yeah, many years. I got two girls. The elder one is 11 years old. The younger one is 8 years old. So when my elder daughter was 3 years old, there's one incident that hit me really, really hard, that actually reminded me I have to change before it's too late. That was a dinner at home, and then she refused to sit next to me. And why was that? Is because since baby, I imposed all my anger and frustrations and all those bad emotions on her. Even when she was still a baby, I would scold her until she cried. And then and it's not because that she misbehaved, she's just a baby, but it's because of my own issues. And of course, I got no patience back then. I do not know how to even handle my own emotion. And when she was 3 years old and she refused to sit next to me on our own dinner table, that really hit me really hard. So that is when, after that, then I got really the good opportunity that I learned meta coaching. So in that meta coaching, I really learned a lot how emotions can actually impact ourselves, and also in everyone in our life, including my husband and also my kids. So it takes me many years. She's already 11 years old, and imagine from 3 until 11 is already more than 7 years, and I'm still learning because she's turning into also a teenager now. But I'm glad to say that I started that time, and then it is never too late to start now as well for you, because our kids, they appreciate what we do, because the moment they see you change, they change. So for me, my lesson is I need to change myself first, then the kids will see it, and then they will also change. Yeah, that's why I'm just sharing with you.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Daniel.
you.
I think I think my wife is actually experiencing what we have experienced before. She's actually throwing temper, I mean, a lot of frustration there. And we're actually in a deadlock. And I thought to myself, right, there must be a way out. There must be something that we are not doing right, or that's why we are trying to manage I mean, so I'm thankful that just now you shared your experience, and this is first time that I joined this, so I don't know about what meta what, I can't remember what's that, all this meta coaching. So I have no idea about all this.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I also want to ask, how do I read about this or continue on, to learn about this so that I can share with my wife, so that we can both improve ourselves and also help our kids to develop, into a better person, because it's really challenging, especially I'm away. So it's also a learning curve for us as well. Yeah, I don't want to end up, developing a child with bad personality or being angry all the time, because they basically follow us.
Yes.
Very much, but it's also very difficult for us to control our own emotions sometimes. Yeah, so it's tough. That's why I want to continue on with this. I'll read more about this. Maybe I'll send you an email after that. See how I can do something about it.
I was about to say that I'll be happy to contact you after this, and we discuss about it, because it is a skill that we can learn, and it is never too late to learn this. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, thanks for this. Thanks everyone for sharing as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So everyone, thank you very much for such a wonderful evening and wonderful discussion. So before we end, probably just for me to wrap up with what we have discussed this evening is that as what we in our discussion, that parenting is a very demanding task. It requires a lot of skills, but the rewards are definitely fulfilling. Thank you, Danielle, for sharing with us the challenges that you went through when your daughter was 3, and that change that you made is now giving you the rewards that you're facing, you are enjoying right now. That's why we need to continue learning. And if, for me, even though my children are adults now, I'm still learning this skill, because now it's about learning how to parent adult children and also to grandparent small children. So that's why we discussed this evening about discipline, because it lets them develop, let them know, learn to become well-adjusted adults. Now, what I would just like to share this evening are upcoming programs that we have. The first one that I would like to share is this program on accessing personal genius. This is, to me, the core of emotional intelligence. Is about being aware about yourself, being aware of others, being able to be in control of yourself. I talked about self-leadership, self-control. So this is the what this program brings to you, and also how to manage relationships in your life. So this will be coming on the 22nd to 24th of July. So that will be next month. Now, the other one I want to announce this evening is Coaching Mastery. This leads to for a person to be an associate certified meta coach. This will be in June of 2023. Now, in order to attend Coaching Mastery, you need to attend the Accessing Personal Genius and also Coaching Essential. That is the core communication and relationship skills. So those are the two announcements that I would like to make this evening. So with that, I would like to thank all of you. So ACMC, the one that I showed just now, KK, was the course that that Danielle mentioned earlier, the one that she attended. Yeah. So we are going to have it in Malaysia. It will be conducted by Michael Hall. So that will be an awesome experience. Yeah. Okay, so everyone, thank you very much. Really appreciate your being here. And I look forward to seeing all of you again in the next sessions. And I will also send you the slides that I prepared for this presentation. So with that, good night, everyone. Take care and God bless all of you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.